T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Coach on Fire Radio.
I've been taken for your doctor. Moon, moon on the water, lay me down upon your altar.
Thank you, Rachel Hamer, for that piece of music. Go to rachelhamer.com/music to get more information about her. Hi, you're tuned into Sacred Erotic with Gila Nehemia, and I'm here with Amrita Grace today. Amrita is fiercely committed to guiding spirit-led women into their authentic, embodied personal power since the year 2000. She's inspiring women to live fulfilled and abundant lives of their dreams. Amrita is a co-founder of the Sacred Feminine Mystery School. Amrita is an accomplished facilitator of sacred sexuality, awakening, and healing workshops, retreats, and teacher certification training for women. And you've also written some books. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Thank you.
I have written 2 books. The first one is an award-winning bestseller, and it's called Reclaiming Aphrodite, The Journey to Sexual Wholeness. And that is a journey through the chakra system for sexual healing from the bottom to the top. It's really quite a beautiful compilation of some of my own personal stories of sexual healing, as well as some guidance and exercises and meditations to help people really reclaim themselves as in their sexual wholeness. The second book is called Dancing with Breast Cancer. And I wrote that from my own experience of having a really amazing and joyful experience recovering from breast cancer very quickly. I wrote it as a priestess path through breast cancer recovery and really wholeness from that experience. And that really stems from knowing that cancer is not the enemy, but a teacher.
Fabulous, fabulous work. I'm really graced to have your presence today. And this topic is very close to my heart. This is, I work in the exact same type of field. I think we have some differences, but still to be revealed during our conversation today.
Indeed.
So let's get to some questions. So what part has sexual healing played in your own life? Like, how did you get turned on to this?
Oh, it's played a huge part because I came into sexual healing because I desperately needed it. I came from a background of childhood sexual abuse, like so many women do, and that manifested for me as adult sexual addiction. And of course, I didn't really know that at the time, but I spent about 20 years acting out sexually through 2 broken marriages, lots of addiction and codependency in those relationships. And when I finally realized that I needed help, I had lots of therapy and took a lot of alternative paths to healing. But I came out the other end of years of therapy with my sexuality still unhealed. So I was really, really lucky to find my way to what was then called the Divine Feminine Institute, founded by Caroline Muir. And I realized that this was my sacred path, that healing myself first and then being able to hold space for and assist others in their sexual healing and awakening was really my work in the world. And so it just served me so well to find my way to very high integrity, very safe sexual healing, and to work with other people to find my own sexual wholeness. It was such a gift.
Fantastic. That's beautiful. Can you get into some more detail of what that means? What is sexual wholeness? How do you define that?
Sure. Well, for me, it's an integration of all parts of myself. There's so much around sexuality that gets driven underground through how we're impacted by religious bodies, how we're raised, our cultures, our lineages. All of this has suppressed so much about sexuality and just driven it underground, basically. So there's a lot of shame and guilt that gets associated with sexuality through many different means. And there just isn't really good education around sexuality for us when we're children and teenagers. So we don't really know how to be sexual beings. We experiment, we do our best, and ultimately, hopefully, we find our way to sexual wholeness. So for me, that means I've really taken a deep dive into my shadow aspects around my sexuality, a very deep dive. And I've retrieved those parts that I sent away and packed away and didn't want anything to do with. And I've brought them back into myself and integrated them and love them. Even if they're not pretty or I don't like them, I can still love them because they're part of me. So this is a big piece of it. It's really taking the deep dive into our sexual shadow and bringing all of this home back into our bodies. And another piece of this too is really the embodiment piece and being very connected into our bodies, loving our bodies, and maintaining the health of our bodies through this love and through this integration. And that's really what got me through breast cancer, was having these powerful tools around sexual wholeness and sexual healing and awakening.
Fantastic. Yeah, I am definitely into the embodiment piece. I think that the more, as far as I see it, the more that I love my body in all of its ways and not try to, I might try to better myself just because I want to, but just to love myself as I am in every piece of me, every cell of my body, as well as, on a whole essential level. That really has helped me. So I totally hear you on that. I wanted to ask you about the sexual shadow. Can you get into some examples for our listeners who are listening, who are kind of into this, but may not be able to tangibly understand you? I was wondering if you can get into some examples.
Sure, absolutely. This is some of what I get into in my book. So our shadow is really defined as parts of ourselves that we have rejected or abandoned or not recognized, but we tend to then just project it out onto other people. So when I was acting out sexually, I didn't feel my shame. I really just powered through being this sexual person, and I called it addiction because it was a way of not experiencing my pain around being sexually abused as a child, and also the marriages that I was entangled in that were very painful in so many ways. So I used sex as my drug, basically. So shame is a great example of what I wasn't willing to feel. So when I started doing my healing work, all this shame started coming to the surface. And a lot of times it was connected to things, and a lot of other times it wasn't connected to anything at all. And I just kept feeling this shame and feeling it and feeling it and feeling it until eventually I would just occasionally feel some shame, and it wouldn't even be attached to anything. And I would just feel it and it would just leave. And now I'm in a place in my life where I rarely feel shame for anything. And if I do, I take a quick look at it and say, okay, where did that come from? What's happening here? What's this all about? And I really examine that so that it's not disassociated from me as something that I'm not willing to integrate. So that's a great example of one of the many ways that sexual shadow can be integrated. It's really about feeling what's there.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Actually, and I want to know what you feel. You mentioned this, and I just wanted to put the piece together if it kind of gels with me as well. Because I've been actually talking about shame recently on my Facebook Lives, and I am working on taking that word out of my own vocabulary, just because I believe it's a social construct. We feel shame because we are asked to be X. For example, I grew up in a religious household, and to be sexual was not something considered, wasn't wasn't supposed to be. I wasn't supposed to really, I'm a woman, I can feel sexual, but not in public. Just an example. So I don't agree with that. I agree with I can be whatever I want to be. And I don't believe anybody has to judge me or say what I should or should not do. So I just wanted to know what your ideas about shame are and how you feel about it.
Well, I'm in agreement with you that a lot of shame is socially constructed. It's laid on us by our families who don't know any better, by religious institutions who have determined that they want to put a box around sexuality and control people through that box. And honestly, that just doesn't work for me or so many other people anymore. And this has been really emerging and coming above ground to the surface and emerging for healing and integration for several decades now. But it's really coming into its full power of coming into exposure essentially now as the social construct that doesn't work anymore that it actually is. So we get a chance to look at it with new eyes and choose. Does that work for me? No, it really doesn't work for me. So there is healthy shame also. If I've done something wrong, I want to feel shame so that I can look at that and take the necessary steps to rectify something that I've done wrong. As a human being, we do these things. It happens. So I want to feel that shame, that healthy shame, so that I can take the steps I need to take when necessary. But the shame imposed on me by others, it's pretty culturally ingrained. So it's not something that we can just instantly let go of. However, we can bring our awareness to it and choose each time we feel it if that's something we really want to own or not. And we can choose, no, that's not me. That's not for me.
Yes, I agree. It's not something that can be instantly let go of. It's definitely a process, and it's a healing journey. And it's something that we as adults, can choose as to how we want to respond. I wanted to know about how sexual energy can be used as a healing force, something I talk about as well. So I'd like to know your thoughts about that.
Beautiful. Yes. Well, I referenced this a bit earlier when I talked about breast cancer. And by the time I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I had several years of tools around sexual healing that I had under my belt. I was teaching, and I used all of those tools to help my healing process go very, very fast. I was actually went from diagnosis to cancer-free in less than 3 months. And that was in part because I knew exactly why why I had breast cancer. As soon as I was diagnosed, I said, I know why. And so I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of dying. I knew that this was something that was basically, it was a blip on my radar. It was something that I needed to go through, but I knew why. So that was the first thing. The second thing was that I had so many powerful tools that I was already working with in my life. And I already had an idea of what I needed to shift and wasn't able to shift it. But breast cancer gave me the permission. It said, okay, you've tried doing this on your own. It hasn't worked. Here you go. Stop what you're doing. It's not working. And I did. I said, okay, I have permission now. I'm going to stop. And then from there, I was able to use my life force energy, which I have full access to and had full access to at that time, to really heal my body. And I also had surgery. So I used the best of all the worlds. I used the best of allopathic medicine. I used the best of alternative medicine. And then I really came inward to use all of the tools that I had, including my life force, my sexual energy, to effect a very fast healing. And part of the reason that I knew I had breast cancer is that I was working way too hard for very little return. That's what wasn't working. So I stopped what I was doing. I stopped teaching workshops, and I really allowed myself to be in the cauldron of the unknown, I called it, for the next several years. Instead of going, okay, this is what I want to do, I'm going to go do it, I really needed to be in more of a receptive place and allow myself to be guided into what was next. And it didn't come for quite some time. I had a few false starts. oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. Great. I'm supposed to help women with breast cancer. And I really thought that was it.